Thank you, Leah. I'm really excited to be here today on the holy day, 420, with you all. Yeah, this is a really exciting time. Many call this the psychedelic renaissance, or maybe the cusp of the psychedelic renaissance. Here in Oregon, it's exciting that potentially next year, 2020, we may have an opportunity to vote psilocybin mushrooms into legal status. So exciting. And we're hearing about amazing work by MAPS, about MDMA studies, and there's all kinds of documentaries and awareness out there about the incredible potential of ayahuasca and its healing abilities. So there are some really incredible potent medicines that are being honored and discussed. Yet the most prolific entheogen, the most prolific psychedelic, hardly ever gets honored for what it does, and that is cannabis. And that's why I'm here tonight. I really want to change that. I really believe that cannabis is every bit the entheogen as any of those other medicines and should be honored and discussed as such. So I'm here tonight to help raise awareness about the potential of cannabis as a spiritual catalyst and as a metaphysical tool, as a sacrament. And I'll be sharing with you based on my personal experience. And specifically, I'm going to touch on 4 different metaphysical aspects of cannabis. And they are cannabis as an amplifier of the psyche, cannabis as a catalyst for awakening, psychic and spiritual awakening, cannabis as a master spirit teacher for mystical meditation, and cannabis as a gateway to the other plants. That's something I think has not been explored very deeply. I'll also be sharing with you some thoughts about right relationship in cannabis, my own personal opinion. And at the end of that talk, I would love to take your questions and explore more deeply with you whatever might be on your mind about cannabis as a sacrament. So why I'm here really is I've had a long relationship with cannabis for about the past 20 years. It started out very much a recreational relationship. I was in high school, hotboxing somebody's minivan, listening to rap music, and then going to fish shows, That was my beginning with cannabis. It's really different for me now. I would say that it was a particular event that really changed things for me. I was into, at this point in my life, meditating with plants. I was into communing in a mystical state with plants to learn metaphysical philosophy from them, to have insights, to expand my own awareness of myself. And at the same time, I was still working with it recreationally at this point in my life. So I took a bath one day after smoking a little bit of cannabis. And at that time, I was thinking, I'm going to take a bath and commune with the water. Just invite the water to be with me and just have that heightened sensation. And so I went into the bath, and something really weird started to happen, something very unexpected. I'm really grateful that at this time, I had an understanding of what ego death was. Because if I didn't know, that would have been really, really scary. So what happened was I'm sitting, taking the bath, just being comfortable, enjoying myself, whatever. And then this intense feeling of doom came over me, like I was going to die. It was beyond panic. It wasn't my heart racing. It was this intense knowing that something terrible was going to happen. And I'm so grateful that cannabis heightens your intuition, because in that moment, I had this flash of a downloaded insight. Ego death. Everything's okay. It's just your ego is aware it's about to die. Okay. So when I say ego, I'm referring to the sense of self, the consistent sense of self that feels limited and separate from all the rest of what is. And cannabis stimulates the crown and third eye chakras into a state of expanded awareness. And so it can threaten that sense of self. And it can also stimulate the psychic energy within your body, what some might call the kundalini energy, maybe at the base of your spine, as the yogis talk about. And so when that happens, it can be extremely threatening to that aspect of our psychology that sees ourselves as separate and consistent and familiar. Because that expansion into the oneness state, into greater states, is unpredictable. Who knows what's going to happen in that moment? So I'm in the bath. I have that feeling of impending doom. I start to stand up to go to my meditation cushion, put on a towel, and I can't, because the energies are moving within my system so intensely. I was lightheaded. I had to sit back down. So I sit back down, and I stand up again, and it happens a few more times. Finally, I was able to get out of the bathtub, put on a towel, go to the meditation cushion, and sit down. And I had the sense, okay, something's going to happen. I don't know what it is. So I just prayed to my helping spirits, okay, guys, protect me. Whatever's happening, just protect me. And then once I knew that I had asked for that, I felt I could relax and let go. And so I just let go, because in those states, if you resist, it's only going to be an agony. So I let go, and I couldn't even sit up. I had to lay down. And the only way I could lay down was with my face on the carpet. So there I am with my face on the carpet, just face down. And what started to happen was really interesting. I began to hear music. And in my left ear, I heard wooden Aboriginal flute music. In my right ear, I heard oomch, 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 dance music, which I don't listen to. It was very strange. And this went on for an unknowable amount of time because it was so vivid and loud and intense. But I'm going to guess 20 minutes, maybe, possibly longer. I came out of that state like, wow, I just had like 3 hits of cannabis. And, you know, that was a spiritual awakening. They can be really jarring, really intense. I have a friend who approached me and she said, Tara, I think I'm going crazy. I said, why? And she said, well, after I smoke cannabis, I'm seeing all these colors around people. I'm seeing things. I'm starting to get information, visual information when I look at people. And I said, oh, well, no, your psychic abilities have been awakened. Your clairvoyance was awakened. That's what's happening. So that's something that cannabis is doing. And it's something I think it's really, really important to discuss. Because for people that don't necessarily have that context, this could be really jarring. But it's a good thing. It's ultimately a really good thing. Because we are at a point right now where the collective is trying to evolve, where consciousness on Earth is needing and trying to evolve into higher states, into higher expanded states of ascension. And so awakening is a big piece of that. And that's also why I'm personally really excited, too, to see cannabis being legalized all over the country now in so many states. Because I know it's going to bring awakening. And who here has taken cannabis in whatever form and felt positive emotions when you did? Yeah, exactly. Who here has felt compassion, expanded states of compassion working with cannabis? Everybody. Everybody, right. Who here has felt your heart open after you smoked cannabis? Everybody in the room. Exactly, right. And so that's what cannabis is doing, and that's one of its most wonderful gifts to us at this time. So I'd like to talk about cannabis as an amplifier. So some of you might be familiar with the work of Joan Bellow. Has anyone heard of Joan Bellow? Nobody. Okay. Joan Bellow wrote a book many years ago. It's called The Benefits of Marijuana. And it's a really cool book. I definitely recommend reading it. She's really well educated in psychology and in divinity studies. And she worked with cannabis really as from the perspective of a meditator who was working towards psychological integration. And she discussed cannabis as an amplifier of the shadow aspects of the psyche. And she went into great detail in that book. I highly recommend reading it. I came to that similar understanding through my own work. And I was excited to see her articulate it so well in her book. And really it is. Cannabis is an amplifier. So many times when people are using cannabis recreationally, they don't like the effects, because sometimes it gives us that happy, creative, expanded feeling. But then who has also experienced uncomfortable things happening when you smoked cannabis, right? Like who's had anxiety? Right, exactly. So what's going on there is cannabis is acting as an amplifier. It's in its role as a sacred teacher, and it's shining a light on what's suppressed within us, what we don't want to face or see. And we need to face and see all aspects of our psychology in order to become fully integrated. So it's a useful tool. In my work as an intuitive healer, I've incorporated cannabis many times and had really incredible results. So, for example, a few months ago, I had a client approach me. He was a friend of a friend, and he said, "Tara, do you think your plants can help me?" And I said, "Always. What do you need?" And he said, "Well, I have pain in my body, and I'm also having a hard time moving through some difficult conflicts that happened in my friendships. And I just feel like I need some help." I said, "Okay, let's sit down with that." So we took a mindfulness-based approach, and we sat down, and I had him tune into the pain in his body and explore it. And really what he came up with at that point was just where the pain was. I remember he said it was in his neck and in his shoulder and in his knee, all pretty much on one side of his body. And he said that he wanted to grieve the loss of this friendship that was really dear to him, but he couldn't cry. And I said, "Okay, let's go from this point forward. Let's get you transformation." And the work that I do is working with spirit allies, inviting, you could say it's a shamanic approach, inviting powers greater than ourselves that vibrate at the frequency of unconditional love to come and do what we can't do. And cannabis comes into this because I think that we are only ready to transform that which we have consciously harvested and integrated. I believe in transformation of that which no longer serves. But if there's still something to learn from our difficulty, then it still serves. So I invited cannabis into the session so that we could harvest whatever the gift of these challenges were for him. I said, "Hit the sacred bong." And he did. And he got to a place where he felt sufficiently stoned. And I sat and held space for him. And it was really transformative what happened. Suddenly he was aware that the pain in his neck was actually his childhood conditioning in Mexico around what masculinity is and how you can't cry if you're a boy because that makes you weak. And so we were able to discuss that because of cannabis, because cannabis amplified what was hidden within his psyche and brought it forward. And so we were able to have that conversation. Well, it's not weak to cry. It's weak to avoid your feelings. It's weak to suppress your feelings. It's strong to face your feelings. And when we don't face our feelings, they manifest eventually as physical pain or illness, and that weakens us. And so I said, "Okay, are you ready to let go of this programming?" And he said, "Yeah." And so we called in our spirit allies, and the pain in his neck evaporated, and he started to sob and weep. And it was beautiful to watch. He held his heart, and he said, "I love you, I forgive you." It was just the most beautiful thing. And that was because of cannabis. I won't go into the other details of a session, but Suffice it to say that all the pain in his body was gone by the time we finished. It was only about an hour. And cannabis played a really, really important role. I had another person come to me who wanted to smoke cannabis for the very first time. And she was someone who was very advanced spiritually, but she wasn't sure what to expect. So she smoked as much as she felt like she wanted to smoke. But being a newbie, she felt she took probably too much. So she said, I overdosed, I took too much. And she started to have anxiety. And I said to her, no, you took more than you're comfortable with. And she said, yes. And I said, okay, you're feeling vulnerable. And she said, yes. And I said, great. That's an excellent place to be. Let's be with that. Let's explore that. And that's of great value, right? Vulnerability is of great value. And that's something we spend a lot of time trying to avoid. And it's something that cannabis in particular often brings up, which is why it's often a bad idea to smoke cannabis at a party. You'll start to feel so vulnerable and self-conscious all of a sudden. So I only work with cannabis at this time very, very sparingly. Personally, I don't use it recreationally. I only work with it intentionally in the context of wanting to look more deeply into my own psyche or wanting to meditate with it, which I'll get into that a little bit later. I think as well, for working with cannabis as an amplifier, it's a great tool when something is stuck within us or blocked within us, and we want a greater understanding of what that is. So, for example, I one night worked with it and was able to really see myself from a detached standpoint and understand where these thought patterns that were bothering me, these stuck limiting beliefs had come from, and I was able to see their lineage back through my ancestry because of cannabis, because of what it illuminates. So I really think it's useful in that way. Okay, and it amplifies not only the psyche, but certainly it amplifies sensation. So it's wonderful to practice mindfulness, presence, right? With eating wonderful food, with smelling beautiful scents, with wonderful experiences of touch. It's obviously wonderful to listen to music with cannabis, as we've all known for a long time, right? Going to concerts and everybody passing around joints, right? So it's an amplifier in general. And it's an amplifier as well of the spirit world. And I think this isn't very widely understood, but cannabis amplifies the spirit world. And it can be used intentionally in ceremony to connect with other beings that are not cannabis, if you want to. And that's something I've done a little bit of exploration with myself. In particular, it's a gateway to the other plant spirits. So the way that I figured this out in my own work started about 10 years ago, is when I started to learn from plants. And I was actually studying the applications in terms of herbal medicine and edibility of wild plants. And my teachers often encouraged us to sit and meditate with a plant that we didn't know and maybe take a tincture of it in order to learn what its uses were. Because while there's a misunderstanding that our ancestors learned about plants through trial and error, through trying this thing out and seeing if it made them sick or not, or what effect it had, and kind of like how we would now, kind of a scientific-based approach. I'm sure there may have been some of that, but to a much larger degree, our ancestors, those who lived off of the land and very close to the land, had a greater understanding of our interconnectedness with all life and our oneness with all life than much of our society does today. And so they used a different way to learn about nature, and that was direct experience and direct communion. So my teachers encouraged me to sit and meditate with plants in order to learn about how they could help us and just receive intuitive messages. And so I had some experience doing that, and I meditated with dandelions, with passion flower, with, yarrow. That's what my tattoo is. lots of different plants. And then I went to an ayahuasca ceremony, and I had a really powerful experience. And I came back from it, and I thought, why don't I sit with cannabis in ceremony? Why don't I do the same type of thing with the psychoactive consciousness expanding plant that grows here? Why not? So I tried it, and I invited about half a dozen friends, and we called ourselves the Moon Tribe because we would get together on the full moons, and we would get as high as we could, and then we would meditate together in a circle, and we would take tinctures of different plants and use the cannabis as an amplifier to alter our consciousness and connect with the plants. And we had really, really powerful experiences. The technique that I used was to simply sit and breathe into the heart space. And in doing this with the cannabis, it went from what for me were subtle impressions meditating with plants to full-on visions and sometimes clairaudient experiences. I had one really powerful experience in particular where we were meditating with a lichen called usnea. And has anyone heard of usnea? Know of it? Yeah. It's called old man's beard, and it's a medicine for pneumonia and lung infections, among other things. It grows in our forests, and it's a stringy lichen you see on the floor. Anyways, so we took tinctures of this old man's beard, and we meditated, and I had this really profound experience where all of a sudden I had a vision of myself in a past life. I was a shaman warrior chief with a full headdress. I was a man in this lifetime. And this self was completely, fully, presently, consciously aware of me here and was transmitting through the crown chakra an activation. And he spoke to me, as did some women that were with him, and they were whispering in my ear over and over and over, get a drum, 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 get a drum. And I did. This is the drum that came to me shortly after. Doesn't it look like a moon? Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And my friends who were sitting there next to me heard it. They actually heard the whispering. Yeah. It was so powerful. It was so powerful. My friends also had their own really vivid experiences sitting and meditating with the cannabis with other plants. And interestingly, I didn't know it at the time, but that is actually one of the ways that ayahuasca was traditionally used. It was used to discover other cures. Kambo, the frog venom medicine that I serve, was discovered that way. The shaman that found out about Kambo for the first time, the legend is, had drank ayahuasca and was looking for a cure for his village because everybody had basically depression, melancholy, and lethargy, and that wasn't normal. So he was looking for a cure, and in the context of drinking ayahuasca, in his vision, he was shown that the frog, the Amazon tree frog, had the cure for him. And so that's how Kambo came to be. Anyways, I think it's interesting that ayahuasca has been used as a portal to other plants, as a portal to the spirits, the spirit realm, right? The Daime Church does a lot of work, mediumship work, with connecting with other types of spirits. I think it's really interesting. So after I drank ayahuasca more recently, I thought, I would like to continue to connect with that spirit. And I would like to do so even more loudly than I'm currently doing, because that spirit can stay with you and teach you. But I wanted to connect with the ayahuasca spirit vividly. So I smoked cannabis with that intention, and it worked very, very powerfully. And the ayahuasca spirit told me that she calls cannabis her little sister. She calls her little sister. Because if you think about it, I think that they're very similar plants in many ways, teachers in many ways. And I had gotten a really powerful activation in that ayahuasca ceremony. And it was so powerful, it was shocking. And I wanted to understand how to use this power that had been given to me in a good way. So that's what I was asking when I smoked, and I wanted to connect with the spirit. And what happened was a vision. a straight up vision of the ancestors sitting in front of me, and they told me 3 things about the right use of power, which I'd love to share. This was really powerful. Would you like to hear it? Okay. Yeah. They said, unconditional mercy. That's the first thing. Unconditional mercy. The second thing, unconditional love. And the third thing, relentless optimism. Unconditional mercy, unconditional love, relentless optimism. Yeah. And understanding that power is about creation. These are really good teachings. To use our power only for good. Unconditional mercy, never to harm. And we harm sometimes simply by judging. That cuts us off, cuts others off from the flow of unconditional love and from magic. So unconditional mercy, unconditional love, relentless optimism. Because we have creative power. If we have anything less than relentless optimism, we're giving our power to negativity, which we don't need to do on this planet anymore. And unconditional love, they shared with me as well in that vision, is also the highest form of spiritual protection. So that was of great interest to me. Has anyone here ever experienced or know about negative entities, psychic attacks, things of that nature? A few? Yeah. So when you're sitting in expanded states of consciousness with plant medicines, especially cannabis, it is possible for beings in the invisible realms to come and take advantage of your vulnerability if you don't sit within a closed container that you've created using your intention, for it to be safe, for it to only have light and good within it, or if you're not fully in your power. And so in the unseen realms, there are beings that want to perpetuate suffering among humanity. There simply are. And they do this because they want to harvest our negative emotions, or because they want creative power. And that would be how they would like to use their creative power. And so they do this through putting thoughts in our minds, and sometimes whole belief systems in our minds, by stimulating certain feelings within us. They can try to make you think that you're feeling fear when it's actually not even you. It's really interesting. They can do all kinds of messy things and cause mental illness and cause all kinds of suffering, among other problems. And that's one of the reasons, again, why I don't use cannabis recreationally and why I don't smoke cannabis at a social event. That's not the container for something like that. So psychic attack or issues with entities, you could say they can be contagious even. So there's different ways of shielding yourself. There's lots of discussion about, put yourself in white light, things like that, sage a lot, smudge, right? But the highest form of protection is actually your own vibrational state. If you love yourself completely and everybody else, there's no room for anything else. So it's the highest form of protection. This is the highest vibration. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about here, or one of the last things, is cannabis as a master teacher for mystical meditation. So my interest is in applied metaphysical philosophy. I like to know tools and perspectives that are true about reality and about life and about healing the self and healing the planet. And I learn from the plants. The plants are my gurus, and cannabis in particular. And these are some of the things that I learned from cannabis through meditation, just through sort of spontaneous download. And this is a strain called Purple Widow. It's grown here by a grower called Oregon Roots. And they had gifted this to me, and I'm really grateful because I had some really incredible insights I'd love to share with you. So I smoked intentionally and I meditated, and the plant helped me understand what the nature of attachment is. The nature of attachment is fear. It's grasping something because we don't trust that something better would come in its place if we didn't have it. And the only reason that we really grasp things and fear that that whatever would come next wouldn't be better is when we don't love ourselves. Because if we understand that we are unconditionally loved and unconditionally worthy of love, then we know that all that wants to come is good. All that wants to come into our lives is good and is a gift. It's only through judging ourselves that we cut ourselves off from the flow of the good. Because the divine truly is pure love and doesn't consider any aspect of ourselves unforgivable or unlovable, no matter what we've done, or what we've thought, no matter how we've shown up. The divine is all about that unconditional mercy and unconditional love. So attachment comes from the mind, and it comes from not understanding how lovable we truly are, and how loved we truly are, and how the nature of the divine is pure love and wants only the very best for us. The plant also showed me that the heart is a portal for earth healing. Within the heart space, we can actually help heal the planet by holding the vibration of love around the planet, visualizing and holding within, because everything is within. And she shared as well that what we choose to do with our creative power, our consciousness, our free will is very, very potent. And so, in fact, as powerful as the divine is, as powerful as our helping spirits are, they can only work miracles in our lives to the extent that we use our power to empower them. Because we are creators, we are co-creators. And so we actually have to use our own power to give our power to the divine, to love. Because otherwise we tend to give our power to fear, and we create fear. And we create sad things and suffering. And that's part of the reason, a big part of the reason, why we have so much suffering on this planet, is this misuse of power, this misunderstanding about how we have free will and what that really means. Another thing the plant taught me was that Earth is a master realm. This is a place for advanced souls. Nobody here, no matter how new they may seem, is actually that new. This is a super challenging playground, a super challenging classroom. And so we can look around and we can see really advanced souls in every set of eyeballs that we see, no matter how they seem to be acting. And she taught me as well about love. And she explained that many times when we love something, we grasp it. I love this thing. I'm going to hold it really tight. Desire, kind of a volitional energy. And she explained that the right way to work with the emotion of love to uplift is really to hold the being or the thing or the concept that we love and hold it in a space of love, expansively, honoring it and allowing it to vibrate with that energy of love, and in that way uplift its vibration. And she shared as well that we can attain certain virtues and qualities that we want. For example, say you want to be more compassionate, or you want more beauty, or more intelligence, whatever you want, more health. The linear way of thinking about it would be to take specific steps to acquire these things. But the cannabis plant taught me that actually we can simply commune with these energies and cultivate these energies in this way. It's really interesting. So I've done cannabis ceremonies I want to share again. Patrick over there has been to one of them, and they've been really, really interesting. So ceremonial cannabis use can be really profound, and you can approach it lots of different ways. I shared some ways that I've worked with it in terms of amplification of plant spirits. It's also really cool to sit and meditate with people and do guided meditations and just explore connecting with your higher self, explore connecting with your heart space, and just simply be in that container of everyone sharing an intention. It can be really powerful to do that shared meditation. And if you make music together after doing that, it can be really cool, really good music. Everybody's just super tuned in. So we experienced that together, and it was really, really fun. So there's just so many different ways to work with cannabis. I think it's an incredible tool. I hope that it's respected as a sacred medicine, because it's so profound in what it can bring to us going forward. And I want to just, before taking questions, just leave you with some thoughts about right relationship to this medicine. So I think that the right relationship to this sacred medicine is something that everybody has to individually determine. But for me, to approach it as a sacrament means that I'm using it with some sort of an intention. I'm using it with respect and gratitude. And I'm not using it as a Band-Aid. So back when I was using it recreationally, before my awakening, I would be bored and get stoned and watch cartoons or something. And I would just make a habit of it, or I would be sad and get stoned because I wanted to change how I felt. The plants really don't like to be used that way. They don't mind if we're in a place where we don't have the capacity to do something different. But when we do have the capacity to do something different, when we do have the capacity to address the underlying causes of our sadness, when we do have the capacity to find hobbies, they don't want to be used that way. They want to be used as healers and teachers with respect. That's my experience. Because I think the plants really are, in many ways, bodhisattva beings. They're beings that offer their bodies, their full lives to our betterment because they want to relieve our suffering. And so we owe it to them, I think, to work with them with some amount of respect. That doesn't mean that I'm sitting here judging people who get stoned and play music, get stoned and make art. I think that's a totally legitimate use of working with this plant. It's all about intention. It's intention, that's all. And it isn't a bad use of the plant to get stoned and hang out either necessarily, but it's just, what is your intention, and are you being clear about the container that you're in, and are you looking at the plant as a being that you're excited to spend some time with? This is just my perspective, of course. I think everybody's perspective is valid, and we all just have to do what resonates as authentic with ourselves. I want to mention a few growers in town that I really like. I think where you get your cannabis is valuable and important. And if you can get it from a conscious grower, I think all the better. So I want to mention that I really enjoyed that Purple Widow strain by Oregon Roots. I have good friends at Enlightenment Farms. They grow great stuff, all kinds of things, outdoor. And Yerba Buena, I love their CBD strain. It's called Blue Dragon Desert Frost. And it's all CBD. And at this point, I pretty much only work with CBD. I'm so imbued with the cannabis, I don't feel I really need THC these days for the most part. So I've been making a cannabis oil with that strain from Yerba Buena. Really enjoying that, just meditating with the CBD. And there's also a grower in town called Canananda, and I really like their strains. And when I was doing big group cannabis ceremonies with 25 people, that's what we were smoking was, they have a strain called Canatonic, and I cannot remember the other one that we smoked with them. We had a lower THC strain and a higher THC strain, and they were both really great. So those are just a few. I think, if you can get your cannabis that's outdoor grown and it's actually had its roots in the earth and the soil and it's received the sunshine, from the stars at night, all that good energy, I think that's more spiritually potent. But everything's sacred, everything's part of it, everything's creation, so it's all good. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk about this beautiful teacher on 420. Thank you for coming, and I'm really interested to hear what your questions are.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have one. So could you speak a little bit to ingesting cannabis rather than smoking or making a tea?
What in particular?
Just how you experience those differently in terms of sacrament.
Great, yeah. So the question is, how is cannabis different if you take it as an edible as opposed to smoking it or another way? Yeah, definitely different. Edibles can bring on full-on psychedelic experiences for sure. Way, way, way more potent, and they last quite a bit longer. So you're smoking it, and you may experience it for 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. If you eat the edible, you may be in it for quite a bit longer, 4, 6, something like that hours. Yeah, so definitely a different experience. I think edibles can be very overwhelming. I think working with cannabis edibles is more of a deep dive, and it's a commitment of a full day to going, well, yeah, off into expanded states, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going around with like microdosing. Is that something that you have done or could do with cannabis?
That's a really interesting question. Cannabis microdosing? Well, I don't know about microdosing THC and what benefit that might have, but I do work with CBD oil a lot, ingesting it. And in some sense, that's almost a microdose in the sense that it's not psychoactive, yet you feel it. Yet you feel its presence. And I find that to be really useful. I think any kind of microdosing that you're doing for the purpose of spiritual communion with a given plant is useful in that way, in that context. I can't speak to other benefits of it, and I haven't tried that. You know, something with THC is it could just be so mentally stimulating too. I think something to know about cannabis as well is a lot of people like to work with it for insomnia, but THC strains in particular can really worsen insomnia. And cannabis can also, not CBD, but THC can burn out your adrenals as well. So I don't think that using cannabis, if you can't fall asleep, if you're not using a CBD, is always a good idea. I just want to say that. Not that that was your question, but just a thought about microdosing. I think, you know, the goal of working with plant medicine is to bring harmony to the system. So if it brings harmony to the system, that's great. And if it doesn't, then, you know, you have this potential of creating disharmony. With cannabis, I think maybe if you were to microdose it for creativity or to stimulate your psychic abilities or something like that, if you want to expand up here, that's great. But we've all seen that really spaced out stoner that's scattered, can't complete their damn sentence, you know, doesn't really have it together, has a million great ideas and can't carry any of them out, right? What that is somebody who's gotten out of balance because their crown chakra is so big. They're so full of creative ideas. They can't ground them. They're not rooted. So that's one of the pitfalls of working with cannabis too much, potentially. Of course, it also depends. What type of person are you? What's your constitution? Are you a naturally extremely grounded person that has a hard time even having an idea? Well, then maybe it's great for you. But if you're someone who's already an idea person, already gets really excitable, you're an entrepreneur, you're a visionary, well, then if you use it a lot, you might not carry out your ideas. That can happen. Actually, I'll mention really quickly, another medicine that I think goes well with cannabis and meditation for this reason that grounds your energy is hape. And for anyone who's not familiar, hape is a sacred tobacco snuff from the Amazon. It's insufflated up the nose, and it pulls your energy down into the earth. It's very masculine energy, generally. There's different blends. It's tobacco with other herbs. It's the ashes, so sometimes, you know, they could have multiple plants in them. They always do, sorry. They always have multiple plants in the blends, but it's primarily tobacco. And tobacco is definitely a strong masculine energy. And that's a really neat complement to cannabis because cannabis is a strong feminine energy. So cannabis lifts you up and expands you out here, and hape pulls you down here. So they can be really neat to pair together, especially hape at the end of your meditation. It's really cool, but you can try it either way. It can really change things. It's really neat. Another plant that I like to pair with cannabis for meditation for opening the heart more is passion flower. And so when I was doing those meditation ceremonies that I mentioned, my friends and I would make a blend of cannabis with dried passion flower and some mullein herb as well. And we would smoke that all together, and it would open us up. And I find that passion flower is really good at helping us with receiving. So it's helpful with cannabis is already amplifying and expanding us. The passion flower helps with the heart space. Because, again, cannabis is really a crown chakra opener and a third eye stimulator. And it does open the heart too. But passion flower really opens the heart. So it's a really nice combination, and it softens it. It's gentle, really gentle. Yeah. So there was a question over there.
Oh, I have actually 3 questions. I'm collecting them. The first one is, as a participant, what are some tips to protect yourself in a ceremony? Because I know things can kind of get crazy, and you probably want to do it beforehand. And then also, how do you make the best, as a participant, how do you make the best of the ceremony for your own good? And then as a facilitator, how do you navigate, a group of people that are all in the medicine space?
Thank you for those questions about cannabis ceremony. Yeah. Okay. So the first was protection. If you're going to sit and meditate with cannabis around others, or just sit and have cannabis around others, or in general, you don't have to be around other people for protection to be an issue or concern. How do you stay safe? Well, there's a few different techniques. You could start with smudging. Anyone who's doing a ceremony would probably already be doing this. Of their participants would probably be smudging with Palo Santo, sage, cedar, something like that. So working with other plant medicines to clear the field is one way. The facilitator ideally should be setting a container for the space that allows only beings of light into it, so you shouldn't have to worry. At least that's how I do it. I only allow beings of love and light that vibrate at the frequency of unconditional love. That's all who's allowed to be anywhere around me or in my space, and certainly in my ceremonial container. So ideally the facilitator does that. But if you're the facilitator, that's how you can do it. You use the power of your free will, your intention, your creative power to decide. You step into your power and you decide, this is what it is. That's it. That's all I allow. Or if you're the participant, you can make that decision too. This is your sovereign being. This is what you allow. That's it. You have to just stay in that power. You can call upon your spiritual protectors as well, your power animals, whoever, your spiritual protection, angels, and so forth, things like that. It's another technique. Or, as I mentioned, unconditional love. If you love yourself, no harm can come to you, because we experience what we are. We attract what we are. If you are love, that's all you're going to experience. So you can raise your vibration to love. And you do that by really just sending yourself or allowing yourself positive energy, no matter what, in response to everything. It's a practice, for sure. So unconditional positive self-regard, that's a key. And if you start to feel lower emotions, like guilt, or something like that, or fear or shame, it's to bring love to those emotions. And then those emotions, their vibration raises. So those are all some techniques. How do you get the most out of a ceremony? That's a great question. I think openness and willingness to experience whatever you need to experience, and respect for the plant. Of course, if you're coming to a ceremony, I think you have that. But just openness and intention, I think, are the key. And then was there another question?
Yeah, as a facilitator, how do you navigate or manage the participants?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if something, kind of goes awry, and somebody's having a really hard time, or do you have people, assistants with you, or do you just go to them and just sit with them? Or, I mean, I've been in ayahuasca ceremonies, so it's probably similar, but I don't know.
Thank you for that question. That's interesting. I've never done a ceremony with edibles, which is where I think that might come up more. I've only done ceremonies where we're sitting for an hour, and it's never come up where somebody had a really hard time, like can happen with ayahuasca. Although I did have a couple people cry and just leave the room to go cry, and I had one of those people wanted to leave because she just kind of got triggered in sort of a fight or flight state. I just talked to her. I just, went over and talked to her and just said, hey, be with your process. It's cool. Stuff's coming up. It's helpful. It's good. Just be with it. It's going to pass. This pain is very temporary. It's a catharsis. Just cry. It's okay. It's safe. And that was it, really. But anxiety is something that can happen for sure with cannabis. So that's a good question. I just haven't really had it come up much. Yeah.
Your group meditations are done with CBD then, not THC?
No, I did group meditations with THC. It's just I personally like to work with CBD. But I like one-to-one strains too. You get a little bit of both. I think it's fine for anybody to do whatever's resonating for them. I haven't done a cannabis ceremony in a long time, actually, because I don't like to organize ceremonies. If somebody wants to organize a ceremony, I would be happy to come facilitate it for you. I'd be happy to do that. If somebody wants to do one-on-one work, I would be happy to come facilitate that for you. But at this time, I'm not organizing ceremonies. So there's no set way that they have to be done. And so if you have a vision for one, and you have a certain way you'd like it done, there's a very good chance that we can do that. Yeah.
Good question.
Mhm.
Do you have any tips for beginner getting into meditating with cannabis?
Great question. Tips for a beginner getting into meditating with cannabis. So would that beginner already have meditation experience?
A little bit.
A little bit. Mindfulness meditation?
Not really.
What type of meditation?
Just like relaxation. I mean, I didn't. It's me. I'm talking about myself.
I figured. Yeah.
I don't know. It's just kind of like breath work.
Okay. So I would say with cannabis, you can do lots of different types of meditation. You can sit still and decide to just be. You can explore your energy body and play around with what's my aura, where's my aura. You can connect to what's my essence, what does my energy feel like, which is something I really love doing. I love doing guided meditations in those ceremonies that I mentioned. That's my favorite thing, is guiding people into exploring with cannabis, because it's an amplifier. So you can sit and explore. What's the essence? What does my soul feel like? Where is it? And just explore. I think it's a great thing to play with. As far as mindfulness, you can listen to some really good mindfulness technique meditations where really it's about becoming present with sensation of some kind. It could be the sensation of sitting still. It could be the sensation of listening to sound or music, sensation of scent. I love to play with essential oils in my ceremonies. I love to incorporate all those things together. And it could be chocolate. You could eat chocolate or something else that you like and explore the flavors of it. So you can use it to bring you into presence, or you can use it to bring you into some kind of an amplification of your subtle body and your subtle awarenesses, your psychic awarenesses can play. I think play is a big piece of it. Or you can go into it with a question. What do I need to know about myself right now? Or just simply listen. You can go into it and commune with the plant. You can go into it and do self-love meditation. I think that's one of the most wonderful applications of working with cannabis and meditation. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Maybe one of these days I'll do some form of workshop or something. That would be really cool. Yeah. If there was enough interest in some way to market it, I would totally do that. It could be really fun. Thanks for the question. Yeah.
How long after an ayahuasca ceremony would you use cannabis to communicate with her? When I've taken ayahuasca before, they've kind of warned about like a week or before or after not using anything.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So that's an interesting point. So there's a lot of ayahuasca traditions or circles that look at cannabis as a drug. And they're like, don't touch cannabis, it's a lower frequency medicine, or it's not a medicine. Many people don't even view it as a medicine. They treat it like alcohol, as an intoxicant. They tell you shouldn't have it before ceremony or after for a while. But there's also people, like I've heard the Daime Church, and I've heard various circles in Brazil actually smoke during the ceremony. So there's not really a guideline. I personally used it like a day after, and I would use it during. I would, if I was given that opportunity, because it's an ally for me. I love cannabis. I trust cannabis. I don't see it as somehow lesser. I think maybe the reason that there are these prohibitions is because it does open you up so much. If you're not able to protect yourself, I think it could potentially cause problems or create an ungroundedness in your field, which we wouldn't want. So I can see why those kinds of rules would be there. But I've had a lot of arguments with facilitators of ayahuasca that I respect, because they just look at cannabis as a drug, and I hate that. It's not. It doesn't have to be. I mean, it's a medicine. Everything is either, right? But it's how we use it. And I think cannabis deserves to be treated with the same respect.
Could it be a mindset thing too, where if that participant does see it as a drug, they probably shouldn't?
A mindset thing? Right. I mean, if we're working with a plant as a sacrament, that's really different than if, we're using it unconsciously. But like I said, it does have these effects. It does open you up psychically and in crown. It does make you vulnerable to other beings. It does do those things. So there are reasons why you might want to stay clear of that ahead of another ceremony. Many people say that ayahuasca wants to be the only plant spirit in your field, too. I don't feel that way, but a lot of people do. Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you.
In the context of cannabis being like a beneficial, a benevolent plan, how do you explain like short-term memory loss and like loss of motivation? And is that just an overuse thing, or because I wouldn't be here if I didn't think cannabis was more useful than not. But those are things that I've felt myself and seen in other people too. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just they're using it too much, or they're not thinking of it in the right way, or I don't know. What would you say about that?
Thank you for that question and your thoughts about it. So the question being, in case anybody over here didn't hear, how do we explain the fact that cannabis can have undesirable side effects of it? In particular, for those who use it a lot, you could potentially have short-term memory issues or loss of motivation. Yeah, I remember in high school when I was using it very heavily, I was in the car with my mom, who was so intuitive, and we were talking, and I didn't think she knew. I thought that I was good at hiding this. And we were talking about something, and I went, what are we talking about? And she looked at me, and she said, moderation. Moderation. Yeah, and I think that's the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, moderation. I think, I try to use the plant when I feel like it has something for me, like there's a magnetic pull, as opposed to, because I'm bored, like I said. So there's been periods of like 8, 9, 10 months when I didn't touch it. And there's a lot of times if I do, it's maybe like once in a month or once in a week or something if I'm using it a lot. So I think, frequency and overuse are worth considering. I think that everything's a medicine and everything's a poison potentially. It depends on how we use it. Depends on the state of our bodies, our minds, where we're at, and whether it's going to bring harmony or disharmony. So anything is good. I mean, too many apples, like 1 apple a day maybe is good, but 20 apples a day is a candida infection for sure.
Yeah.
Right? So it just all depends. Yeah.
In terms of your experiences with having like ceremony in different environments, is there just being outside and being different, I don't know if you've done it in like forests or on beaches or different places, but do you have like any recommendations about that, or?
So recommendations for where to hold a ceremony?
Yeah, like
most of the ceremonies that I've done have been indoors in sacred spaces, in spaces that were charged with having done a lot of spiritual work. I've done, I'm also a Reiki master, so it's holding those ceremonies, the one where I had the vision, the drum and everything, was in my Reiki space. So I was doing tons and tons of spiritual work there, so it was super charged. And then when I was doing group ceremonies, which Patrick came to, that was in a practitioner space, and multiple people were doing all kinds of cool ceremonies. So I think a sacred space is ideal. Outdoors would be amazing. I haven't really done any outdoor ceremonies. I would love to. If somebody would like to create that possibility, I will definitely come show up and do it. That would be really fun. I'd love to someday have tropical getaways and all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah. I think outside is always awesome. You could potentially connect with the nature spirits with cannabis. I could definitely imagine doing edibles and spending a whole day just talking to the trees, just sitting and communing with the water and the rivers and listening to them. I think that would be amazing.
Would it in any way like amplify if you're going through just some self-healing and some self-love stuff? Do you think that would be very beneficial to be outside?
Definitely. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Being outside is always beneficial for healing, but being outside is beneficial for our well-being in general. It's been shown in multiple studies that just like 30 minutes outside has an antidepressant effect, and people who are in hospital rooms that have plants or views of nature get better faster. So definitely, I mean, anytime we can connect to nature, that's always a great idea, for sure. And yeah, I love that you mentioned cannabis for self-healing and cannabis for self-love. That's really what it's been for me. So many times I've smoked and then become aware of these places within myself that I didn't realize I didn't love, and that the plant was like encouraging me to bring love to. I think that's so important. Yeah, so valuable. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about cannabis or cannabis abuse as a gateway for spiritual possession?
ask that again?
Do you have an opinion about cannabis or cannabis abuse as a gateway for spiritual progression?
Spiritual possession? What does that mean?
Like the negative entities come in and taking over for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can happen. That can happen, yeah. So can smoking cannabis lead to being possessed? Yeah, it can. Yep. I've had a lot of problems, actually. I don't think directly from cannabis, but I personally had a lot of experiences of going into temporary states of like delusions and paranoia and mental illness and major neurotic episodes and just craziness because of entities, which then when they were removed or when I got back clear and in my power were gone, and all of a sudden I'm back to my most centered self. So yeah, as one who walks the shamanic path, yeah, definitely that's very real and very possible. So cannabis is definitely a healing medicine and a tool, but we still have to be in our sovereignty. And anytime we judge ourselves, we are at risk of dealing with entities. That's actually what it's been. What's been my path is having to learn really unconditional self-love and truly what it means to have faith, complete faith. If you go into any time that you're going to have anxiety, you're turning away from the divine. You're turning away from the source of love and infinite creation and infinite protection. When you turn away from that, there's always a potential. Or when you judge yourself, you cut yourself off from it, there's always a potential. And if you judge other people, because we're all one being, you cut yourself off from it. So if we judge each other, we have a potential to be messed with by lower vibrational forces. It's really how we use our power. Yeah, so great question. But so I would say that's always a potential, whether it's cannabis or not. Yeah.
Would you recommend women use cannabis when they're like on their moon, when they're like fully bleeding?
Totally, yeah. Should women work with cannabis while bleeding? Definitely. That's actually how I mostly worked with it. I've made it my moon time has been my self-healing time. Yeah, and cannabis, CBD is a great way to relieve menstrual cramps. Works really, really well, especially ingested. We make CBD oil with coconut oil. Just throw the herb in the crock pot with coconut oil and just let it go for 4 or 5 hours. Strain it. Do a 1-to-1 ratio volume of herb to coconut oil. And take like a teaspoon or a tablespoon. It gets rid of menstrual cramps. Works really, really well. And yeah, you can do really deep inner work at that time. It's natural that you kind of want to be alone when you're on your period, right? You kind of want to look inward. So it's the perfect time to work with cannabis. And cannabis really is a very introspective tool. So that's the other piece of it. So it's not recently Teresa gave an awesome talk about San Pedro. And San Pedro, from what I understand, I haven't worked with that one really, is more of an external experience. It's outside of your body. It's for interacting with the other plants and the other things around us, the elements and learning and so forth. It opens the heart and it's for being outside yourself. Cannabis is a very, very internal one. So it's also possible, I just want to share, you can become really self-absorbed if you smoke weed all the time. And that happened to me too. I have had to realize that, whoa, I've got to think about something else. Not just listen to my own thoughts and feelings. Oh my gosh. So it can make you too introspective too. So it's like if you're already introspective, kind of thoughtful, philosophical person, there's definitely such a thing as too much cannabis for your personality. And at the same time, if you're someone that doesn't do a lot of self-reflection and you're very focused on others, then you probably would do really well to use a lot of cannabis. It's all about balance. Yeah. Okay, any other last questions?
What was the name of the book you referenced earlier?
Oh, the book I referenced, yeah. So there's a book called The Benefits of Cannabis by Joan Bellow. And it's a really cool book for those who are interested in cannabis for amplifying the shadow of the psyche and integrating it. And she talks a little bit about reaching enlightenment with cannabis too. It's a really cool book. There's also a book called Cannabis and Spirituality, edited by Stephen Gray, which is also worth looking at if you haven't. I know he came and did a talk for Portland Psychedelic Society back when it was called Peers. Yeah. And his book is it's a compendium of writings from different cannabis ceremony facilitators. So it's definitely worth checking out and just seeing some different perspectives. And I got a lot out of that book too. And there's also a book I wrote I'll mention. It's not about cannabis. It was before I changed my name. It was before my spiritual awakening. But it is about learning about plants. And it's called Dandelion Hunter. And some of you might have heard of it or even known me back in those days, which was over 10 years ago. I was really interested in helping people to learn and be interested in exploring the benefits of wild plants where we live, having a primal relationship with them in a modern context. So it's a narrative and journalistic and memoir kind of all woven together about exploring the magic of the plants. And at that time, not too much of the spiritual magic, because that's not where I was at. And I had a different name, so it's under a different name. But that is that book I wrote. And there are TV shows still floating around with me on them talking about books, that book and plants, and you'll occasionally see it. People come up to me sometimes, like recognize me from the OPB episode that they keep replaying about foraging stinging nettle. Yeah, it's a fun one. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming out tonight and talking about cannabis on 420. Thank you for your attention, your awesome questions, and your interest in the subject matter. And I'm definitely open to working with you if you have ideas about how you'd like to explore it further. Yeah, and you can find me on Instagram. My handle there is Green Goddess Rising. And my email is blossomsunfolding@gmail.com. Yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, I'll mention really quickly also briefly about combo. That's a whole other subject. Just in case anyone's wondering what that is. That is the purification of the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual bodies using frog venom. It comes from the Amazon. It's another sacred medicine. It's applied through your skin. That's what these burns are on my forearm here. And it's a very, very transformative medicine. It gets rid of trapped emotional pain, physical toxins, and clears your karma. It enables you to manifest things that are more aligned with your true nature. It enables you to align with your soul purpose and your highest path. And it's a really powerful medicine in all kinds of ways. It's an incredible healer of the physical body, incredible for PTSD. Just so much good stuff about a combo. And if you want to learn more about it, you can look at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tara Rose Sacred Medicine, and you'll see videos about it, talks about it that I've done. And yeah, plenty to say about that too. I have lots of different types of medicine. Leah mentioned in the beginning that, yes, I do carry a medicine that comes from someone that doesn't tie their frogs. I also have medicine from people that do tie their frogs. It's not always cruel. Sometimes it's done really well and with respect, and I have all kinds of different medicines, but whatever you're interested in, if that's resonating with you, I'd be happy to talk with you about it. Only good high vibrational medicines, of course. Thank you.